Hello and welcome to Canotillo Combos, the official Canotillo ISD podcast. I'm Gustavo Reveles, the Director of Communications for the school district. With us, of course, we have our fearless leader, Dr. Pedro Galaviz. Doc, we have some guests online here. We have Laura, of course, at the controls. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
But we have our board president, Armando Rodriguez, joining us this week for the podcast. Hello, Mr. Rodriguez. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello and welcome. Thanks for having me again.
And
hopefully he combed his hair this morning.
yeah, thankfully the podcast is not a visual medium; it's a audio medium. So, but Doc, we are have a special guest on our podcast today. We have a chance to profile a successful Canotillo High School grad that's out there in the world making a huge difference. Mr. Eddie Rascon, CHS class of 2007 graduate. Eddie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure being with some of my own.
Yeah, you know, you are. I know you're in San Antonio right now, but I think you're based out of Manhattan.
Yeah, so I have a residence here in San Antonio, but I work in the Wall Streets of the world. I'm a portfolio strategist actually for one of the largest mutual fund companies in the world. It's been around for over 90 years. And our motto is that we improve people's lives through successful investing. And so my job is to help some of the world's largest international wealth banks to achieve that every single day. So actually, I just arrived from New York a few hours ago. So I'm actually glad that I was able to make this podcast.
Yeah, you know, and we want to thank you. I know you're kind of jumping back on online here after landing in San Antonio. So we appreciate you making time for us. Mr. Rodriguez had told us about you and that he had spent some time with you over the summer while reconnecting after you guys spent some time in high school. And we're all very impressed with the trajectory that you've taken. Tell us a little bit about life after high school. Where'd you go and how'd you end up in doing the work that you're doing?
And how did you get from Donovan, from Alice the burrito lady, Lupitas, Bariles, and to New York? I mean, can they pronounce Canotillo or is it Canotillo?
No, but we can definitely get into where Canotillo is relevant, as it's been an interesting investment for a lot of people from a municipal bond perspective. But I digress. I actually grew up in Vinton. I grew up in Vinton, not too far from the old Canotillo High School, actually, which I did attend for I think a year before the new high school was built. And when I left Canotillo High School, it was tough because I really didn't know what was out there in terms of opportunity. I had been successful on the football field, and luckily Scott Brooks and a lot of the coaching staff, they pushed me quite a bit to be disciplined and focused, not just around athletics, but also my academics, which at the time I didn't realize the value of it. But what that ended up basically giving me is an opportunity to go to New Mexico Military Institute, where I played junior college football there for about a year and a half. And I told myself, if I got an opportunity to get a scholarship to any 4-year institution, it didn't matter who it was, I was going to take it. And part of it was because my upbringing, my father was a construction worker and my mom worked at the Region 19 Head Start as a cook. And so if I was going to reach any kind of collegiate aspirations and tuition is going to be paid, it really wasn't going to be through their income, right? And so I really put that onus on me. And I ended up getting a scholarship to play at the University of Missouri of Science and Technology, which is renowned for engineering, renowned for mathematics and science, which, as you know...
Where Coach Brooks' son went?
Say that again?
Is that Coach Brooks? His son went.
That's right. So Bo actually ended up going to the school because when he was ready to start picking schools, Coach Brooks and I spoke, and he realized that, that actually was a great school to go to, and it did amazing things for me. And Bo had a really strong academic and athletic opportunity there as well. And so we ended up actually making a name at the university. And today there's actually 3 Canutillo graduates that have gone through the program, and we all made a name for ourselves at Missouri S&T, as they call it. And the reality is that they're looking for more Canutillo grads. And so every time the coach picks up the phone and calls me, I'm always willing to kind of give a recommendation, because they realize the kind of hard work ethic that we put out here in this district, but specifically from Canutillo High School. They like that can-do attitude.
Well, I mean, that's great. I think it shows the type of leadership and the type of maturity that Coach Brooks expects from his players and the high school expects of its students. They really translate to what one can do after high school. And you're proof of that, and Bo's proof of that. And
So
I know
did
we
you?
have a lot more talent.
So were you an engineering major, and then how did you get into the finance part of?
Yeah, so let me pick up where I left off there. So after going into Missouri S&T, I actually had zero desire to be an engineering major, but I wanted to take that scholarship, and so I had to push myself. It was a rigorous academic program. They don't bend for anybody, and that's really part of the value proposition. So as I went through the program, I realized, hey, there's really nothing that fits me. And I remember going to speak to the dean of admissions and saying, you have a lot of engineers here who have been here for 6-7 years. They still don't have a degree. What is your plan for them? They're just going to keep on paying tuition and they haven't declared a major. And he said, well, we should probably think about having a multidisciplinary studies degree. And so I am the reason why the multidisciplinary studies degree exists at Missouri S&T. I actually work with the dean and all of the board of regents to basically get that approved. And I was the first one to graduate. And I have a background in technology, science, and math because of the school. I didn't pick a discipline in engineering. But what I found that allowed me to do is that it really created a bridge to the job that I do today, because where I sit, I have to do a lot of math. I have to understand a lot of the risk parameters within the statistical elements of investments, but also I have to work with people. And so being able to pull from a lot of these more linear type of disciplines that people tend to kind of focus on as a profession allow me to create a really interesting narrative for opportunities to invest in because of it. And so most people didn't understand what was going on at that point, but if you look at the university today, in their curriculum and in the degrees that they offer, it is one of the top degrees that they offer in the humanities area, because so many engineers there that go through 5-6 different types of disciplines decide that they're just not gonna go in one path or another, because they're just so creative and they end up taking the multidisciplinary studies approach. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and that's how I ended up taking that multidisciplinary route there. So a very kind of unique way of kind of melding the academic background that they offered with some of the opportunity that I had through the university to actually play football. And I actually ended up doing quite well in the field. I was All-American. I led the nation in sacks at one point with 13 and a half. I was invited to play all over the world. I played in Europe, specifically Germany. I learned how to speak a little bit of German. I traveled all over Austria and Croatia.
Gus speaks German.
Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch, ja?
Ja, ich spreche Deutsch. Ich komme aus der kleinen Stadt Texas.
Ich habe beim Schule gelernt für 6 Jahre, aber ich konnte nicht zu viel sprechen jetzt, weil, oh man, see, I'm out of practice.
Nein.
Ich habe leben 2 Jahre der kleinen Stadt Schwäbisch Hall und spielen mit den Unicorns, American Football Spieler.
Oh, yeah, in Vo.
Armando, they're
So-
talking about you.
So we're over here explaining how we're from, we've lived in different places for different times. But the beauty of all those experiences, I think, to summarize, what I realized through that experience was that, there's not one single way to define success. It really is a matter of crafting your own story and staying true to yourself. And the things that I knew I could do is that I could talk to people and that I could work hard. And it didn't matter if it was at science or math or engineering. I just set out to really accomplish one thing, which was get a college degree. And as I kind of transpired through those levels in my life, I got an opportunity to work in the NFL because of having been involved with the German Football League. And so I worked with the Tennessee Titans front office. I worked with the New Orleans Saints front office. And a lot of my work there really helped bridge the gap in just creating more client experiences that generated more revenue for both teams. Eventually, I realized that most of the people that I work with actually were more interested in talking to me about the world and life and investing than they were about the football teams. And I ended up actually getting a job at Scottrade Investments, which is actually not a firm that's around, but my first job was as a stockbroker, and I traded investment vehicles, stocks and bonds, mostly on behalf of clients. And particularly where I became very valuable to them was in being the young guy who was willing to do all the research for them. Nobody wanted to pick up a K1 statement or a fact sheet and really find out if what the company was saying they were doing was happening behind the scenes. And so I was able to sit down with clients and pull in my quantitative background as well as my more soft skills around engaging people to tell them a story about whether or not that was a viable investment. And that became really my value proposition to a lot of the clients that we work with. And throughout that process, I was actually reached out to by the company that I currently work for. And they asked me if I was willing to relocate to San Antonio. And at that point in time, I didn't realize that what that was going to turn into was me launching or being a part of a launched in international business, going out and working with international clients, working with large banks, and eventually becoming a certified financial planner and a certified investment management analyst. So I think the bottom line is my biggest attribute that I developed through my time at Canutillo High School sports was work ethic and never shying away from a challenge, right? No matter who we were playing, no matter what was the subject matter, I always viewed it as a challenge. Some of those tests are very challenging. They are very math focused, but at the end of the day, I realized that a process and a hard work ethic would deliver upon everything above all else. Really, that's what it came down to. And so where I sit now is I'm a portfolio strategist. I've had all the experience in analyzing individual stocks and bonds and mutual funds and in exchange traded funds and looking at international economies. And I deal with some of the most interesting people in the world. Some of my colleagues are ex-ambassadors to, different countries like Germany and things like that. I was just in Miami and, we had a meeting with the president of Spain. And we got a chance to, sit down and have a conversation around what's going on in Spain and how the economics are working there. And that takes more than just one profession. It really takes a lifetime of experience to be able to kind of bring in different elements to be relevant. And I think that my background became very, very relevant because of the unique different stops that I had along the way to get there. So that's how I got there.
Eddie, one thing that I see is, El Paso or Canutillo is like mile marker 8. It's so different.
It's not exit 0. We're wet and wild. That's for sure.
What would your message be to the seniors or these young, because sometimes it's hard to get them out to see the world, to see past Fort Stockton, past Boston, and I don't know what would be your advice? Seems like you took many risks in life.
Yeah, when you don't have much, it's easy to do that, and I think that many people that come from Canutillo, they come from a background where it's comfortable to stay where you're at. And my biggest advice would be don't be scared to find out how great you can be. because this area, this city has a way of making you feel like it's okay to stay in the same place and not push forward because it's a family-oriented city. Leaving family is hard. Pushing past those kind of feelings of emptiness and worry and uncertainty, more importantly, is tough. But own that. Allow that to be your driving force, because Canutillo is going to be here and you're going to be able to make that better when you come back. And I would say that, if you look at my story, that's just one example. I'm looking forward to hearing somebody else's example, because there's many out there that have the ability to do what I did. The difference is that I took the step that others weren't willing to. And that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day, is are you willing to do what others aren't to get to where you want to be? And if the answer is yes, then you're already set up for 99% of the opportunity.
Can I add? I think one, I'm extremely proud of you, and I believe the rest of our staff and our community is. But like you said, you're one example, and at the end of the day, we're trying to multiply this to make sure we provide opportunity for many of our kids. But one of the major questions that keeps coming up is the question around debt, whether it's municipal or government debt versus, us having to get debt for either a loan or for, us. I guess for sure, I didn't have a trust fund, but I wish I did, but I had to get debt to get property and map. I think that's been a contentious or question in the community, and I don't know if you want to touch up on that.
So state the question again a little bit more.
And in regards to debt, like in other words, governmental, for our school district, 85 to 95% of our budget has to deal with our staff. And so the only way for school districts to build buildings in Texas, we have to acquire debt and ask the voters for that. And if you could bring it more to a personal, as I didn't have a trust fund or the ability for somebody to give me a house. I had to get a loan to get the house I'm currently in. So I think, how does that work? Because they talk about the actual loan amount and then what is paid over time, but I think in reality that's the only option we have to grow in a better way.
Yeah, I think that the best way to kick this conversation off is to really take a step back and let all our listeners understand that what is a municipal bond? What is a bond in general? And I think for many people, when they hear this, they kind of cringe because they feel like it's a financial burden that they're going to have to bear for a long time. But if you talk to people like me who deal with investments all the time, really we view it as a wonderful opportunity, especially for smaller communities. And the reason is that these are debt instruments. These are debt vehicles that municipalities, cities, districts can use to finance the future growth that is coming to that area. And the beauty of it is that you can do it over a long period of time. It is one of the only type of debts that you can take out that is issued in decades or multiple decade periods. If you look at any of the corporate debt that is issued today, that comes due in less than 5 years. So you actually get better payment structures.
When it comes to borrowing for a school district, there's many reasons why a school district would borrow money. Mostly it's taking into account the future growth of the school district and the population and really servicing the needs of that district. Borrowing money is not easy for many people, but for school districts, it's actually something that is very advantageous because it can be paid over long periods of time. When you look at the problem that we're having today in Canutillo, it really just revolves around the fact that there's a lot of students that are in the district that should be attending the district, attending somewhere else. And what most people who live here in Canutillo need to realize is that actually does not allow for funding to really efficiently occur in the district, because every single student essentially is given a portion of a funding through the attendance process. And with those students not being here, obviously, being there's obviously a lack of funding. Now, when it comes to borrowing through municipal debt, this is actually something that Canutillo has done for a long time and has done so very efficiently. When you look at the history of the high school and how it was actually developed, even back in the day when we were in Bosque Road, it was through municipal funding. And everybody wants their children to attend schools that are the newest, that have the best resources. And most of the time, when you look at how you do that, it's through these bond offerings that most people tend to feel like sometimes they don't understand, because it's a lot of hearsay about what actually the money is being used for. But at the end of the day, when we look at a municipal bond offering, it's something that really is utilized for school districts, cities, municipalities all over the country to be able to borrow at very low rates, at very low cost, to develop for the growth of the community. And that ends up giving people like me, people like many of our listeners, an opportunity to be exposed to better teachers and better resources that other districts tend to have sometimes in swaths because of the attendance that they tend to attract, given that there's more population there.
You know, and I want to ask you this, because that's been a point of contention for a lot of people, which is why would we take on more debt when we already are in debt? And there's this perception that school districts should not have any debt at all. From your knowledge and perspective, is having a school district debt-free an anomaly or the norm?
It is actually the norm. And the reality is that it's not about being in debt. It's about being able to manage the debt that is priority. And what do I mean by that? If you look at if we step away from school districts and we just talk about corporate America, every single successful company today has some sort of debt, or has taken some sort of debt in order to finance its growth. Some can grow organically, and that's because they're corporate structures. But the reality is about debt management. And some of that debt sometimes is taken on to maintain certain facilities, but at times it also is really focused on helping finance the growth of those companies. We dial that back into how that affects schools, and it really is a different model, because the school is not there to be profitable. The school there is there to be a service. A district is to be a service for its inhabitants in the community. And nobody wants to pay tuition for that, and they shouldn't have to. And part of that is because we have government funding, but at times there's deficits. If we want better school facilities, we want access to better technology, all of those things have to come from debt funding. And that debt funding actually helps bring in better teachers and better resources to be able to advance the knowledge base of those individuals who attend the school. Managing debt is the important part. Being debt-free actually is not always a good thing, because that also means that you're not taking advantage of your credit rating. In the case of Canutillo, being an investment-grade credit issuer actually helps. And what that means is that if we're looking at your experience or FICO credit score, your interest rate is actually going to be more favorable than those people that have the 540 credit score.
Right.
And the reality is that Canutillo has done an amazing job at managing some of that debt. I understand that there's a deficit that needs to be funded and has been talked about, from prior years. But it really is more about managing the debt efficiently rather than completely eliminating it. Because at times, your ability to take on debt in the future to grow is going to depend on your relationships with those that actually buy the debt, which in this case, for me, I understand, since I'm in the investment side, is a lot of the banks and institutions that tend to look at districts that are very strong and healthy, like Canutillo, for investment, and you want that exposure. You want a little bit of that history there.
Well, and I guess a lot of people are equating taking on a mortgage for their home to taking out a bond, and it's not always apples to apples when it comes to that type of investment and debt issuance, correct?
It's not. And, in the case of buying a home, you're inhabiting the home and you're paying taxes on the home and you're maintaining the home. And there's different reasons. The money just goes directly to the equity in the home. When you're looking at municipal debt, specifically bonds that the school district is raising money through, you're really looking at betting on the community and the people that are in the community to make use of the resources. So, for example, the proposition that is up on the ballot, Proposition A, I believe, is really to help increase technology and space for students at different schools. It's to also help maintain some of the spaces that we've been making use of for so many years. And Proposition B is to retire some of that old debt, right? So part of what I mentioned is being able to continue to finance the growth and reduce the debt burden, which, if you think about Proposition A and B right now, those two things do that very efficiently. And when you look at the way that a municipality is looking to manage its debt, it's totally different than mortgage, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is that you're trying to bet on the future. When you buy a home, you need that for today. That is going to be something that is going to be financed through many, many, many years, and you may not be able to, at some point, sell that home for what you want. We know that our students, they're assets in the community, and if we give them the opportunity to make use of these resources that would be brought on through the financing of some of this municipal debt, their futures are worth a lot more in some ways if you parallel that to what buying a home for some would be. Now, what I'll say is that most people really just stop at the word bond or debt. Where I tend to be more focused on is it the appropriate time to actually start pulling debt into the district, given the prevailing interest rate environment, given the prevailing inflationary environment? And if you look at history over time, it actually has been extremely beneficial for a borrower to take on debt in inflationary periods, more so than it has during non-inflationary periods, because what happens is those people that are lending the money, they're losing purchasing power because they're locking in a stated interest rate, and inflation is eroding that purchasing power, right? So if inflation is 3% and I have a 7% bond, that means that my real captured gain, the purchasing power of my money, is only around 4%. But those who are borrowing it, they're investing in real land, they're investing in real assets, and those tend to be very advantageous during times of inflation. And so if I think about, is it appropriate for the district to be taking on debt at this point in time, it actually makes more sense than it has ever, given that, we have had higher inflation and rates have tended to kind of hit a bumper. And those two things are positive signals for a district for districts who are trying to grow and trying to manage their debt. It's the right environment.
Great, and it's good to hear that, because hopefully people are listening to this and it helps them assess the information and making their own decision for before they head to the polls, because we know that's been a big concern for a lot of people. And unfortunately, the state of Texas outlines how schools should fund the repairs of schools and the construction of new schools, and it's not through funding from the state, but rather through bonds and the issuance of debt. So we are at a bind here to make sure that we inform the community of that and see where they want to go. Doc, as we go about talking to people, and most people out there don't have the knowledge and finance that Eddie does. How do you think we can relate this message out to the community?
Well, I think one of the things, like Proposition B, what I understood, it's retiring our old debt that we picked up, and then the new debt is just, it's part of what we have to do in order to fix or repair our learning spaces, and also to add to this community, because it's part, that's how we grow as a school, as a municipality is by through bonds. So I think it's a lot, equating it, it's different from a mortgage. But Eddie's the man. Eddie's the man.
You know,
what I'll compare to is you know, a lot of times people lack creativity in the way that they conceptualize certain money concepts. And what people don't realize is that the debt that the district is actually issuing, people can buy that debt and they can actually get the tax-free income. So if I'm voting for Proposition A, let's say, and tomorrow Canutillo passes the proposition and these bonds become available, I can go to any banker, whether it be at Charles Schwab or TD Ameritrade or Merrill Lynch, and I can say, I want to buy $1,000 of the bond that Canutillo just issued, and if it's available, you can put that in your bank account, and every 6 months you get paid an interest payment that is tax-free for the most part. And so in some ways, if you were worried about the $3.60, I believe, that it would have on a monthly basis as an impact for somebody with an average house price of, I believe, was $250,000, correct me if I'm wrong, you would actually be able to capture some of your tax money back. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that the fact that somebody is willing to lend Canutillo the money means that they believe Canutillo can pay the money back. Somebody has bet on Canutillo. And if somebody from outside of Canutillo is willing to bet on us, then why not us bet on us through the process of voting yes for the growth and expansion of the school, but also understanding that this is also a financial opportunity for individuals that are looking for something to put their money in these days, outside of putting it under the mattress. They can invest in Canutillo as well by going to their banker and saying, hey, look, I'd like a little bit of this bond issue that, you know, might have just been passed. And many of the most interesting people that I work with today, they approach it in that way, right? Because they support the growth of their district, but also they're able to benefit in some ways from a financial perspective, which you don't have a lot of cases where you can have your cake and eat it too in this world, but you know, for some people that actually is possible in this case.
And you know, that's I want to remind people that the bond election, if approved, would add 2 cents to the tax rate for the average Canutillo homeowner. That means $3.17 a month added to their school taxes at its height, at its most. So that's the investment that you're talking about.
Exactly. And, you know, I think most people that oppose it, they just feel maybe like they need more information. And any person that doesn't have enough information to make a decision, I would say that is the right way to kind of think about making a decision. Don't make it until you know what that actually is going to be, the implication between, you know, the time that you make the decision and decide to or not to do something. But the point that I want to make is that in 2020, we issued bonds specifically because of the environment that Canutillo was in, which was one that we had to be nimble. We had to provide laptops. We had to provide technology to continue providing high quality education and really pivot the entire educational system at a moment's notice. And the credibility of Canutillo, its credit score allowed it to do that. And some of that money that was used to buy those laptops for students during COVID, that was brought to municipal offerings. And I don't know any parent that right now would have said, hey, look, I would have rather my son, my daughter been at home and not been able to access the educational system in the way they did. And if had that been on the ballot on that day, and had they been able to go out and vote, I think we would have had a very strong showing.
Mm.
And we're in a different environment today because obviously COVID is not necessarily gone, but less of a threat. And, we're talking about a different bond issue. But it's that type of example that I think really showcases how Canutillo is willing to step up for its residents and its students. And it's come time to retire some of that debt. And I think right now it's a good opportunity for a lot of the residents to understand that we can continue to keep the credit rating and health of Canutillo through this proposition while expanding the district for further opportunity.
Great. Well, Eddie, we want to thank you. I know you've been traveling and been want to get home to your family. We want to thank you for joining us and clearly explaining some of these issues that are complicated, and it takes a brilliant Canutillo High School graduate mind to explain it. So we appreciate you coming on here. We're all proud of the work that you're doing, and just proof positive that Canutillo is doing great things in the classroom and on the field for its students and helping them reach great heights.
The next time you're on, you can give us stories about Mondo.
Well, Armando is a Hollywood star all on his own, so we'll probably have to have a different segment on that one. But I appreciate you having me.
I'm not sure that'll be another story. Eddie, thank you so much, and
thank you, Eddie.
Everyone. I just want to remind you guys that we'll be if you're listening to this before Saturday, we're all doing an informational walk on Saturday at 9 in the morning. We're gathering in the parking lot at Rudy's. Join us so that we can spread the word about the bond with the community. We'll also be at Inca Park, which is by Garcia Elementary School, starting at 10, with some great student showcases this Saturday. Several schools are going to be there to help us with student performances, with jumping balloons, with snacks, and fun and games. So join us at either one of those two events, where you can learn more about the district and learn more about the bond election. Doc, we'll see you there on Saturday.
Thank you. Thanks, Eddie.
Oh, bye-bye.